We are Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14, presented by Bearded Irish, here to recap some SEC baseball from the first weekend of conference play. Full disclosure, Blake and I's first priority this weekend was basketball. It's the NCAA tournament. There's a lot of SEC teams that played and are still playing. Only so much bandwidth. This guy speaking's got a cold, so we have to sleep at some point. But we did our best. But Blake, here's where I want to start with this weekend. It is not often you see 5 sweeps in SEC baseball, but that's what we got this week, and that was not something that was on my bingo card for the weekend.
No, probably not. The brooms were out, and I think the most talked about one for a lot of people, and you and I, we had this discussion to start the season was, no, Missouri first 3 games of the year. We're wondering, all right, is this just kind of, hey, start off great when SEC play gets here? Let's see. I don't, maybe not. May not be able to hold up. Well, what do they do to start SEC play? They sweep Tennessee, and so. What about the Tigers? Like, I know we got a lot of Missouri fans now based off of basketball season, but yeah, like, I mean, what a job that they. I mean, like I said, you could tell. I think from that opening series to start the year, and but now to come out and sweep Tennessee, the defending league champion, pretty remarkable. I think that was the biggest thing
There,
for me. So.
there were 2 series to me that were astonishing in the way they went down, and that's the first one. Am I? Well, I'm I don't know if shocked is the word. I'm certainly surprised that Missouri took the series. I'm shocked that Missouri swept the series. I'm doubly shocked that the composite score in this was 23-6. Tennessee just could not hit Missouri's pitching. Did it help Missouri that there was a 7-inning, 2 7-inning games and a doubleheader on Sunday? Yes, it absolutely did, because Tennessee's got the deeper bullpen. Blake, I'm going to go back though to the first weekend of the year when I was watching the whatever the classic as out in Arlington, the Missouri, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt played in. I watched a lot of Missouri that weekend, and I left that series kind of with my curiosity peaked because we didn't know much about Missouri coming in. There was very little out there on that team. The one thing I did note was that I looked across the lineup of hitters, and a lot of those guys were coming back. The pitching, I just wasn't sure about. But I watched Missouri play in Arlington a lot. And I came away thinking, hey, strange stuff happens on a given weekend. And you never know. Sometimes a team can look good for a weekend that's really not. But with that in my back pocket as reference, I watched Missouri again. I saw some of the same things. I saw much improved pitching. I saw a lineup that can really stroke the ball and challenge you. Missouri can hit balls to the gaps. It can hit them over the fence. And to see Tennessee have its 3 starters roughed up by Missouri, like if you'd asked me 5 weeks ago, the chances of this happening in the way that it did, I would have said you're crazy.
Well, I mean, look, if you start a game off well, that tends to give you an advantage. They scored 4 runs in the first inning Friday, 3 runs in the first inning Sunday in the first game, and then 4 runs in the third inning on Sunday as well in game 2 of that one. So, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to look at the number here 4, 5, 8, 10, 14, 14 runs in the first 3 innings between those 3 games. So, yeah, I mean, they came out and took care of business early, and that was that. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty impressive. But now they play Kansas, I think Wednesday, but then they go to South Carolina, which there's a fun series, right? Maybe it's gonna have a little more pizzazz to it than we
Yeah,
thought. Missouri
I'm
and
really
South
curious to see
Carolina
that one.
on Friday. So look at that. So
Yeah, for Tennessee, all 3 hitters, Burns, Dolander, and Beam, got hit to various degrees. Dolander gave up, I think, 5 doubles and a home run. Now, he's a guy that's near the zone a lot, and sometimes he will be prone to giving up home runs, but again, not something expected. Tennessee, though, just really, we are now a month plus into the season, Blake, And this is a team that really that lineup being rebuilt, it's obviously not the same as it was a year ago. And again, I did not expect Missouri's pitching to be at the top of the league, but here it is with the .17 ERA 1 weekend in the league.
Yep, playing pretty well, and we said that'll be a fun series to look at because South Carolina's won 11 in a row now, 20-1 this season. Yeah, they lost that first game against Clemson, but took care of business against Georgia, pretty decisive fashion. The last 2 games of that one. Talk about streaks. South Carolina's won 11 in a row. Arkansas's won 13 in a row. Kentucky, 14 in a row now because
I'll get to Kentucky in a minute. Yeah,
they took it to Mississippi State. So, yeah.
I think the second most interesting series to me was Vanderbilt sweeping Ole Miss. Now, I kind of thought Ole Miss would win the series, even though it was in Nashville. Vanderbilt has just not been hitting. Ole Miss has been having some pitching troubles, but Vanderbilt just had not been hitting anybody. It did bust out in a midweek game this week for, I think, 15 runs, something like that. So it's like, okay, maybe they're getting it turned around. But Ole Miss, my goodness, that's a lineup of bruisers, man. Kip Alderman and guys like that. I thought Ole Miss would come in and give Vanderbilt some issues with its lineup. I thought that we knew Ole Miss had some pitching issues with depth, and Hunter Elliott's out. That makes a big difference. But I just thought that didn't seem like a good matchup for Vanderbilt right now. But boy, I was wrong about that. Vanderbilt won that series. Vanderbilt dominated that series. What was it, 27-4? That was including a run rule. Of course, Vanderbilt being the home team, it doesn't bat in the last half of the ninth. So Vanderbilt got 27 runs on Ole Miss in less than 24 innings, Blake. I did not see that one coming.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either because we had talked about just kind of the inconsistency, not knowing, how they'd hit the ball, and that had obviously been a theme. And I think even going into the season, we talked about the pitching and kind of knew where things could stand there. But yeah, it was a matter of would the bats get there? And yeah, 27-4, and just the ultimate recipe for success. Like I said, you found the hitting, the pitching was there. That's why, the expectations are still very high for this team. And, I think the thing is, right, you start off that way, and now they got Mississippi State next, and they got Georgia after that. They go to Missouri. That one, again, looks a lot more fun now. But, obviously things, I think, set up pretty well for them based on the results, from Mississippi State and Georgia. So, yeah, that was easily one of the more wow series of the weekend because, like you said, I don't think I would have. If we're not betting men, as we always say, but I don't think I ever would have made a bet on Vandy to sweep that series. So,
yeah, and pitcher of the week is, I guess you could have a two-way tie because they put up pretty identical stat lines. Hunter Owen for Vanderbilt throws a complete game, 2-hit shutout, strikes out 11. Brandon Sproat also threw a complete game, 11 strikeout shutout too. So we'll see what the league does with players of the week. But Vanderbilt got through the weekend on 6 pitchers, Blake. If you can do that in an SEC weekend and sweep, you are going to be a mighty tough matchup for people going forward.
yep. So good weekend for the Commodores, and yeah, like you said, it was just I think you can learn something from the opening weekend, even though we talked about there was obviously more games in the non-conference leading up to this, but it is fun as you start SEC play because you just get a better idea knowing how good this league is. So, yeah, I think definitely a lot of positives to take away for Vanderbilt and, like we said, Missouri and some other teams as well.
I guess third on the surprise list, and again, there were 5 sweeps. I think we'd all had questions about Mississippi State for a while with pitching, but I think we also didn't quite know what to make of Kentucky. Kentucky's played well, but it's not taken on some of the heavyweights. To see Kentucky knock off Mississippi State by combined, what was it, 35-11? Was that what it was? It was. I mean, maybe that says as much about Mississippi State as it does Kentucky, but Kentucky is a team that has been at the top of the pitching leaderboard in this league for most of the year, surprisingly. Again, Darren Williams was a key returnee, but Nick Mingione loaded up on transfers, and we'll get to the state part of it in a minute, I guess, Blake. But Kentucky also loaded up on transfers, rebuilt the roster that way. Comes out of the weekend leading the league in runs scored in league play, got 5 home runs. Veterans is a way to go in this league through the transfer portal. If you want to rebuild quickly, that's a good way to do it. And it looked like Nick Minjone's strategy has paid off here pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean they're hitting the ball. That's for sure. Look at the runs they put up, and we said they only lost 2 games at this point. Last loss was February 25th, so basically haven't lost a game in a month. So yeah, I mean I think that we obviously talked to him heading into the season. You can find that interview on the channel, but you could tell I think he was pretty confident just in what they were bringing in. There were still some things that, as always, when you bring in new guys, you're kind of waiting and seeing what you're going to get once the actual season starts. There's only so much I think you can learn in the off season, but you kind of have a good idea, and I think you could tell there was sort of a quiet confidence there that they felt like they were going to make some strides in several areas. And again, boy, they put up some run. 21 Southern Illinois, Indiana 12, 6 in the first game, Mississippi State 12 in the second game, 17 in the third game. So yeah, they got that confidence right now. So.
Yeah, and maybe here's the most important stat. Kentucky this morning is number 3 in the RPI.
Don't get me started on numbers and
well,
computers
I know, and it is early, but here's the point I'm getting at, okay? If you start the season that high in the RPI and you can just tread water in the SEC, you feel really good about your postseason chances going into things. Kind of like the net. No, am I saying Kentucky's the number 3 team in the country? No, but they in South Carolina at 2 or 3 teams you're looking at. Missouri also at 18. That's a team that's gotten off to a really good start. These were not teams that we looked at as NCAA tournament teams going into the season, but you need to start putting that on your radar, a possibility given the way those 3 teams are playing.
I will leave the numbers to you, and anyone that has watched our basketball coverage understands what I mean by that when it comes to the metrics. But no, you're right. It's a good place to be this at this point in the season. It's not like we're just we're not early. We still got a ways to go. But hey, we were in conference play now, so yeah, it's a nice place to be for the Cats.
Yeah, and again, I like teams that can really pitch. And you look at the numbers for Kentucky right now. Kentucky's given up 60 runs in 20 games. That's the 3rd best raw run total in the league. Struck out 190 hitters, walked only 64. Those are great numbers. You feel like it's a little more repeatable when you're seeing high strikeouts and a fair number. They've hit 15 hitters too, so that factors in. But I really like what Kentucky's done on the mound because that's been a place where pitching depth has been hard to find in recent years, and maybe Nick Minjone's found it. Don't want to take too much out of one series, but State can hit a little bit, and to see Kentucky sweep a series in that fashion, I think to me was pretty impressive. Speaking of teams that weren't getting love at the top that swept series, South Carolina. And some of this is a product of the schedule, I know, but Carolina could not hit very well a year ago, just continues to rake weekend after weekend. Ethan Petrie hit 3 home runs, the freshman. Gavin Cassis has got a dozen. We knew the pitching would be there. I've got some questions about Georgia pitching, and to that, I forgot to get to Mississippi State, so maybe I'll get to that before the end of the show today. But to see South Carolina continually put it together on both sides for another weekend, this team is 20-1 at this point, Blake, and in terrific shape with some interesting series coming up.
Yeah, they're you said they're 21. I mean, any way you slice it, that's pretty good. And yeah, I mean, they're doing a lot of things well. Like you said, I mean, you look at just what they did in that Georgia series. The last 2 games, scoring runs. Obviously, only gave up 7 runs, I think, in the series. Just kind of looking at just the overall picture this year when they've had their opportunities, against teams that we think they're probably better than, they've taken advantage of that. And I think there's something to that when it comes to identifying good teams. Is look, we had high expectations for South Carolina. We knew they were in the SEC. Where do you put them? in relation to the 7 or 8 teams that were in the top 15 or whatever. But I think now that you start to see how they're playing, they've emerged into that category for sure. And yeah, I mean, they're taking advantage of their opportunities and putting up a lot of runs and not giving up a ton. So that's always a good formula.
Let's see the last team on the sweep list. If we hit everybody but Arkansas.
Yep.
Okay, Arkansas didn't get to see any of that one. The Razorbacks allow 5 runs to Auburn. Auburn is a little hamstrung pitching wise with the injury to Gonzalez. That one was in Fayetteville, which didn't hurt, but Dave Van Horn continues to kind of piece it together through pitching injuries. Yeah, again, I didn't get to see much of this one, so hard to comment on it further than that. But Arkansas 18-2, I think is top 5 in the RPI right now. And the Hogs, despite some tough breaks out of the gate with getting some arms hurt, especially Jax Wiggins, have just kept on keeping on.
I think Arkansas fans will understand. I think about 10,000 plus of them.
Yeah, we were watching your basketball team, if we're being completely honest.
Apparently, we're excited about our reaction video we did after they beat Kansas. So I think they'll understand on that. But yeah, I mean, like you said, I think it's just looking ahead. Obviously, have the big series coming up against LSU on Friday, and that kind of starts the usual SEC. Not to say that Auburn wasn't, but that starts that run where you go to LSU, which will just be a lot of fun. Just given again where those two teams are at, and you got Bam after that, Ole Miss, Tennessee. So yeah, nice little month stretch or so coming up here for the Hogs. But like you said, nice to rebound from injuries and such, and to get another sweep like 4 other teams in the league did. So yeah.
Yeah, a couple last things on them. You just look at the power numbers up and down the lineup. Again, this has been a pretty deep lineup. Arkansas can give you tough at-bats at the end of the order. You look, they've got now, 5 guys over 400 on base. All those guys are slugging above 500. Arkansas has hit 37 home runs. And that's not really with Peyton Stovall going yet. He's slugging 538 with 3 home runs. I thought he was probably the most talented kid on that team. Brady Slavens hasn't gotten going like the way Brady Slavens can yet. So, again, there's a little bit left in the tank for this team. Pitching-wise, I think I heard Hagen Smith got moved to the bullpen to be used in a high-leverage role. Hunter Holland's been really good for them. Will McIntyre's thrown a lot of innings so far. Not an overpowering guy, but pitching depth has kind of carried this team through to where it is. And again, that's not easy given that they started the season with Jax Wiggins injury, which is not really what you wanted.
No, like I said, injuries, especially that's not ideal. But I do think that there's, like you said, I think you now go into this series this weekend against LSU and playing number 1 team in the country and in Baton Rouge, and certainly just given the streak that Arkansas has been on now, to go in and kind of test yourselves against arguably the best team in the country. So it should be a lot of fun. So
yeah, speaking of LSU goes to A&M, wins the first 2. Christian Little blows a save in the last one. Despite everything that Hunter Haas gave A&M this weekend, couldn't get the series win. LSU is just, I watched some of this one, such a headache to pitch to. I want to look at Dylan Cruz's numbers coming out of this series because they're unbelievable. He was hitting at 1.500 during the series. I want to see where this wound up. Okay, he's hitting 508 after the weekend with a slugging percentage of 892 and an on-base percentage that I can't find, but he's up there somewhere. Having the player of the year type year that you would think he's having. Paul Skeens continues to have he might be Cruz's biggest competition for player of the year right now. Jared Jones had a big weekend for LSU. This team just hits up and down the lineup. It has sustained a small injury to Tommy White that he's overcome and come back through. just not a lineup you want to pitch to right now. I don't know what LSU's pitching depth is in the rotation behind Skeens. I think it's pretty good. Maybe not as good as the Tigers were hoping before some injuries hit. But LSU leaves the weekend 2-1, and that's always a good outcome when you go to play in Bluebell Park.
Yep. We talked about their SEC schedule heading into it, and like I just said, they play Arkansas this weekend. They got Tennessee after that, at South Carolina. We talked about them, Kentucky, so Ole Miss, Alabama. So like we talked about kind of LSU schedule really picking up, starting with, the start of SEC play, and not that they hadn't played some good teams before that, but we kind of mentioned just what their schedule would be and if they were going to be the number one team, that we'd find out. And off to a good start. Now taking 2 or 3 against A&M on the road, and now just getting 2 big SEC series at home. It's Arkansas and Tennessee next. So
yeah, some numbers on Skeens so far. I mean, you just look at the top of the pitching leaderboard, and he's all over it. Number one in the league with a .59 ERA. Number one with a 115 batting average against. He's 1 inning behind Noah Hall for the league lead in innings pitched. 59 strikeouts, that leads the league. 5 wins, that leads the league. So Paul Skeens, if you wondered how it was going to translate from the Mountain West, I think you're starting to get your answer. Okay. Florida, also one of the teams that won a series. I think the last series winner to be talked about here. The Gators didn't quite get the run output we've been used to in a 2-1 series win over the weekend. Florida still leads the league in runs scored, but we talked about Brandon Sproat being amazing. What you want to see is Florida's pitching, I guess, turn in a little bit better than we've seen so far, and the Gators did that this weekend.
yep, I know you talked about that a lot this season. Just we talked about some of those games they had early in non-conference play, and giving up 10 runs here, 10 runs there. Just kind of seeing how that would work itself out. But like you said, I think that'll continue to be kind of a storyline here moving forward. But nice to get an opening series win against an Alabama team that we've talked about this season. Feel like there's certainly upside there, and just I think we started to see some things maybe you don't want to see necessarily over the past couple of weeks with Alabama. I know they lost that series to Columbia, and now you lose this one to Florida, and it doesn't really get any easier from here when you look at their schedule. But yeah, nice for Florida to grab a couple games there, and like you mentioned, just matter of seeing how the pitching continues to work its way out there.
Yeah, with Florida, the other thing I meant to mention, Hurston Waltrip threw 6 innings of a quality start for the Gators. So you kind of had a little bit of eye on pitching because it had not been at the level we expected. Let's see, who started the third game for them? Can't immediately find that. But in any case, I guess the other thing to watch on the hitting side, the injury situation. They've got a big hitter hurt. Wyatt Langford is who it is. Langford this weekend did not play. So again, that hampered Florida a good bit. That's what I thought. Wanted to look that up to make sure. Jack Caglianone continues to hit. He leads the SEC with 13 home runs. Two-way guy who's been incredible for them. But anyway, I think an encouraging weekend if you're Florida to get out of that without Langford playing and to pitch a little better than the Gators have. Okay, who are we missing so far? I feel like we've talked about just about everybody, but is there a series out there that we didn't get to?
I think we've talked about everything. Yeah, I know you said you want to circle back around on Mississippi State, but I just want to make sure everyone, we're not usually going to probably get a chance to go through all 14 teams in every video. Just for the SEC baseball fans out there, we try to do our best, especially with the tournament going on. But I think you were going to circle back around on Mississippi State, but I think we've hit on most everything else.
Yeah, I was, and again, apologies. We had our eyes mostly on basketball this weekend, and we're a 2-man show here, so there's only so much you can catch. So if I missed something with your favorite team, well, I'm sure I did. But as we get into the baseball only portion of the spring, we'll get there. I promise you. Okay, Mississippi State. My goodness. And I get that State had a couple of studs in Landon Sims and Bednar when it won the whole thing in 2022, but the pitching drop-off from there to this point has been unbelievable. I know having Kate Smith would help tremendously. He's out for a while, I guess. So there's that. But State just is not getting pitching from anybody anywhere. I think it leads the league in walks. Got destroyed at Kentucky by a team that, again, was not probably at the top of our list of batting orders you don't want to face. No offense to the Wildcats, but I'll be very interested to see how Mississippi State bounces back this weekend against Vanderbilt and Starkville. I'm sure we'll preview the weekend series before then, but that was one of the things that just to this point in the season, the fact that State has not pitched better than it has, it's given up 138 runs. That leads the league. You're starting to hear a lot of dissatisfaction down in Starkville for a coach who I think has done a really good job so far. I'm not close enough to that situation to explain maybe why it's as bad as it is, but you have heard a lot of rumblings of unhappiness in Starkville so far.
Yeah, they're not happy. I was going to say, being on Twitter, you can definitely see it. They're not thrilled with how things are going, and I mean, I can't blame them, especially after getting sweeps again against Kentucky, and so yeah, I think the inconsistency, the runs they're giving up, yeah, and I can understand the frustration there. I think from Mississippi State fans right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Chris Lemonis has done such a good job, and it wasn't just the College World Series run to the title. It was getting there in 19, getting there in 18. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but just the fall and how quickly that has changed course has been rather astonishing. All right, well, we're going to have you covered on baseball and especially basketball. We have got our eye on the NCAA tournament and even the NIT. We're previewing every single SEC game in the NCAA tournament and also the NIT. Best way to catch those, hit the subscribe button. Again, keeping an eye on baseball too. We're not as laser focused there as we will be when the season is over. In basketball, again, we could have not done this, but we wanted to get something out there and get an analysis on what we were able to follow. So we hope we found that valuable to you. Hit the subscribe button if you don't mind. That's nothing more than a follow. It costs you nothing. Hit the like button. That helps our analytics. He is Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14, presented by Bearded Iris. We'll see you again soon.